Here we are with Chronicles of Darkness, Creepy Rashomon Marine Buffet, Vampire The Requiem, 2nd edition, The Strix Chronicles, Episode 0. I am Devin, the GM, and to my left we have...
Nicole playing Leo Kelly.
Kevin playing Kaiser Vargas.
And Peter as Fyodor Petrov.
Alright, gang, so this episode isn't an actual episode. You've been punked. It is an episode 0 where we talk about what vampires are and what the vampire characters are like. Ta-da!
Yeah.
This is what you wanted to listen to.
This is what you people want. So, vampires are undead supernatural monsters. They get made when a vampire grabs another person, drains them, and turns them into a vampire.
Yeah, pretty much Interview with a Vampire.
Yeah, like they're vampires.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure what people need to know about vampires. They don't take a lot of damage from things. They're really durable. Like, it's really hard to hurt them.
They're really uncanny up close.
Yeah. They're big weirdos.
The garlic crosses, all that's fucking fake. Except for some vampires it's real, but for most part it's fake.
Yeah, sunlight and fire are the big no-no words for vampires. They don't like those.
Vampires don't have to kill people when they feed.
Yep, vampires just drink, a little bit of blood, and they're good to go.
Also, when they bite people, it feels really good, so they don't normally remember that it was a vampire. They normally just think they made out with someone.
And then vampires just kind of slobber all over the neck holes with their tongue, and it seals it up.
Yes.
Because that's convenient.
That is very convenient.
It's very convenient. People just don't have bite holes in their neck.
Yes.
So, Vampire The Requiem 2nd edition, The Strix Chronicles, is the 2nd edition of Vampire The Requiem, which is a different game from Vampire The Masquerade.
Yes.
And we're not going to go into the details of why it's different that much, because Jesus fucking Christ, there's a lot of differences.
It's basically a reboot, and it's way lighter on the meta plot of the whole.
There is no meta plot. Vampire The Requiem 2nd edition, The Strix Chronicles, is essentially its own game.
Yep.
They thematically change a bunch of stuff. They focus things a lot better on being vampires, and they make a lot of the abilities kind of focus around the idea of the beast. When you're turned into a vampire, something inside of you goes wrong, or something inside of you is put into you called the beast. And it's this omega predator compulsion that makes you want to feed and eat and kill and attack and fuck and stuff.
Yep.
It's like this compulsion that's like the monster part of your soul. And you got to deal with it. Keeping your blood tank high makes it not be as much of a piece of shit to you.
Yep.
Making your blood go low means it gets antsy. Vampires have a morality set called humanity, and it's how much they're disassociating away from their human identity. So it's not about being a moral and good person, it's about you recognizing that you yourself are still a person and not giving into the idea that you're an alien eating monster.
Yeah.
The lower humanity is, the harder it is to get away from that, and the more the beast starts taking control and influencing you.
Yep.
Sticking to human things, like being in human contact with people and interacting with them, not viewing them as something other than
A commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can lose humanity by such things as surviving something that would hospitalize a person. Because,
Yeah. Like taking massive damage from a few shotgun rounds makes you, risk losing humanity because that's something a person couldn't have done.
Or even reading your own obituary.
Yeah.
Like, you jarred away from yourself.
So a lot of things that weren't that great in Requiem and were downright fucking terrible in Masquerade were fixed in Requiem 2nd edition, The Strix Chronicles.
Yeah.
And yeah, vampires come in 5 fun flavors called clans, which are basically sub-breeds of vampire that don't really affect much anymore. In Masquerade, your clan was basically your character class, and in Requiem 1e, your clan was still kind of your character class, but they've limited the influence of the clan on the character to the point where it's more flavor now, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So the 5...
It's not a society you belong to, it's just...
Yeah, and it's no longer a crucial decision you have to make a character creation. It's not that important.
Yeah.
It doesn't flavor the entire character for the rest of its lifetime. It's just an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, basically what clan affects is your bane once you get low enough humanity that you have your little twitch or whatever that you have to deal with, and the disciplines you start with, generally.
Basically, and really, because of how character creation works, you could branch outside of that very quickly and not have to even think about it.
Yep.
So it's not a shackling, or it's just a nice piece of flavoring.
It additionally gives you a bonus attribute point, which is...
Oh,
Yeah.
Neat. So the vampire clans are broken up into different ways to interpret the pop culture image of Dracula. So you have the Deva, which are Dracula as a fuck machine noble. They're all about senses and seduction and feelings and loins and stuff. That's what the Deva are like. And their main superpower is... what the fuck is it called?
Presence. No, majesty.
No, not majesty. Well, and their clan power, because like all the clans have their own ability that's kind of unique to them, is majesty, which is people just loving them like a pop idol.
Yep.
After that, you got the Gangrel, which are Dracula as a angry cannibal werewolf that lives in the woods and is going to eat you to death. And they're vampires as a beast man.
Yep.
Their main shtick is protean. They can shapeshift.
Yep.
That's their thing.
Giant bats.
They can giant bats, dogs, rats, whatever. After that, the Maquette, which is Dracula as a like sorceress shadow monster that like can bewitch you and lives in like abandoned houses and like you see when you're out of the corner of your eye in the window watching you in a horror movie. Their main trick is I think obfuscate.
Auspex.
Auspex.
They have magic sight, so they can see what isn't there and hidden things.
They can see your secrets.
Yeah, they're all about peering into stuff.
Yep.
After that, the Nosferatu, which are Dracula as the monster, or as Count Orlok from Nosferatu, as a pale, claw-hand, bat-faced dude that comes out of the sewer with rats coming out of his clothes, and it's going to break you in half over his knee.
But to be fair, Nosferatu do not need to look like monsters.
No, they don't look like monsters anymore. That's something they've dead and buried.
There's always something unsettling about them is all.
Only if their humanity goes down to trigger the clan bane.
Yeah, because otherwise
If you put a brand new Nosferatu next to a brand new Deva, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Also, that in the first edition, it was more common that they don't look ugly. They're not the masquerade Nosferatu. In the second edition, I think they decided to sort of come back to that with the clan bane. So it's like a little bit of setback compared to the first edition.
Setback? What?
So yeah, Nosferatu in this edition only have social penalties basically once they go down their humanity and trigger their clan bane, but it's not appearance. Like Nosferatu just look like people, but they're vampires as monsters, and their vampire power is called Nightmare, and it's them being able to horrify people and things to death.
Yes.
They're really good at horrifying people. They can really unlock the monster, and that's where the old masquerade Nosferatu comes from, because when they're using Nightmare, it's where it really punches up. And after that, we have Ventru, which are vampires as Lord Ruthven, vampires as Count Dracula, vampires as a blue-blood noble with a snifter of, well, not wine in his hand, who, orders whose servants look all pallid and pale, and who the nice new serving girl in the village disappears one night because she looks all supple and shit. That's what Ventru are.
Yes.
Their main power is dominate, mind control, taking you over. Yeah, that's it. Those are the 5 clans. They're just flavor. You don't need to worry about them when you're making a character anymore, which is great. And then there are covenants.
Yep.
Covenants are the new thing that kind of replaced the Camarilla from Masquerade. Their shtick is, instead of having one monolithic organization that kind of controlled everything, you have these 5 interchangeable modular organizations that don't have any real canon to them.
Yeah.
They're different from city to city.
Yeah, and basically when you have the interplace of the clans and the covenant, you get a wider character variety than just Camarilla, Sabbath, and the clans that are basically glued to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea is that every city is going to have these organizations in different flavors and different strengths, and they're going to have different structures. There's one called the Invictus, and the Invictus in one city are going to be completely different from the Invictus in another city, even if they're both in power.
Yep.
They're not going to have a lot of cross-pollination because organizations have a lot of drift in this game. It's much more sandboxy. You build your own kind of setup.
Yeah. So let's start. The first one is the Carthian movement.
Yep, Carthian movement. What do you know about them?
Well, they're basically the most modern, the newest covenant. They're all about trying different approaches to society rather than just Invictus and their feudalism. They try a bunch of different things, whether it's democracy or fascism or whatever you want. They're about experimenting, figuring out what's the best approach to take, what can be learned here from the social aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't think they're new, and they're not well liked because vampires don't like change.
Well, yeah, I think they started around the time the telegraphs were invented or something like that.
It's fairly new from vampire point of view.
Yeah. Well, they're basically like the counterpoint to Invictus, because you've got the both of them are the covenants that are focused on politics and the social dynamics of things.
Yeah, they're the ones usually like to be left alone.
Yeah. The Cartians' main shtick is the Cartian law, where a bunch of Cartians get together and they decide how they can influence the city. And they can really, even if they're small in number, they can really change how the whole society works based on the Cartian laws. And yeah, they're basically empowering themselves against some entrenched older vampires this way. Which is a really neat flavor that only came out in the second edition. The first edition was more bland and less.
They didn't really know what to do with them in that one.
Yeah. So yeah, that's generally Cardian movement.
Okay. And then there's Circle of the Crone. Circle of the Crone ate up a lot of conceptual space from the Tremere clan and from
Zinisi.
the Zenisi actually. A lot of that went into them. So the Circle of the Crone they're like Dark Evil Witch Cult, the organization.
Yeah. They're basically the first of the religious covenants. Their counterpart is Lancia Sanctum, the Christian one. So they're more of the pagan ritual, more of the personal power, empowering yourself through the magic of Kruak, and using that for influencing people and doing cool shit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're more of the primal sort of magic. And yeah, again, generally like pagans to the Christians of Lancia Sanctum.
Yeah, and after them, we got the Invictus, which are most of the stronghold of the Camarilla from Masquerade. Like it's a vampire society, the default.
Well, yeah, they're the feudal lords. They're basically what carried the civilization of vampires after the Rome fell and Camarilla fell. And yeah, they're one of the oldest covenants out there. They're all about the feudal order because they try to emulate humanity in that way. Because from order you can control your beast because you know what's coming, you know what to expect. Therefore, you're not surprised by someone, and yeah, you're more civilized that way. Therefore, you can cope with your beast more, and you've got the familiar things of belonging, of having a structured society, and knowing where you exactly fit inside the society. So yeah, again, they're the opposite of the Cartian movement.
Yeah, they're the 1%ers.
Yeah.
Alright, that leaves us then with the Lancia Sanctum.
Yeah. Lancia Sanctum is not a religious covenant, it's the Old Testament Christianity, where vampires are created by God to test the faithful and separate the faithful from the unworthy. They are the monster that goes bump in the night. They are the Old Testament damned beasts. There's no savior for them. They're going straight to hell after this. And yeah, that's the fun covenant there. They've got their Theban sorcery, which is another way of empowering themselves to help bolster the faith and help the faithful against the wickedness of the Circle of the Crone. Yeah, they're also pretty old. They're dating themselves back to the start of humanity, with the creator of the covenant being Longinus, basically.
Yeah, that's another thing, because they're Longinus became a vampire because he stabbed Christ in the stomach.
Yeah, and generally they're somewhat weakly aligned with the Invictus on the basic level because, hey, the church and the power structure reinforce themselves. So
yeah, the Invictus calls himself the First Estate. The Lancia Sanctum calls himself the Second Estate.
Yeah. So yeah, most often they reinforce themselves, although customize as you wish. Doesn't have to be that way everywhere.
And the last one leaves
The Order of the Dracul.
Tell us about them.
So yeah, the Order of the Dracul is about middle of the road. They came about around Dracula. That was the first person that actually started studying the vampirism, at least in depth. Yeah, Johnny Dracula went around on some mystical journey, decided to try all the covenants, and all of them left him, wanting for something different. And he started to figure out, okay, how do I remove the curse from myself and become, a super being rather than being a weak vampire? And he started turning the vampire weaknesses against one another, and that's how he developed the Calls of the Dragon, which are basically ways for vampires to shed their weaknesses and, still keeping their powers. So you can start walking around in sunlight, or not be afraid of fire, control your beasts, and other things like that. So yeah, they're generally very research focused, very mental vampires. They don't have a counter to any other covenant. They're basically, the true neutrals. They can go with anyone, and yeah, vampire scientists.
They're pretty fun.
Yeah.
Their coils are pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Alright, and that is the Covenants. Okay, so yeah, power structures in Vampire.
Yeah. Generally, the vampire game is all about the social interaction between vampires and the power struggles between them. I think that's stronger than in the other splats, that you will be interacting, and status matters, your position in society, in your clan, in your covenant, all of them are separate, which is really interesting.
Yeah, so depending on who's really in charge of the city, the different factions will run in different ways. The one everyone's going to be familiar with are the Invictus, because they have a very standard structure that changes. That doesn't really change that much. Like, the Invictus has, the city will have a prince, which is the one vampire that's in charge of everything. He'll then have vampires that represent the other factions in the city that, basically meet with him, and he'll take their input or advice.
Yeah, they're generally called the Primogen. They're
Yeah.
usually the elders of the covenants that advise their prince, and yeah.
Then you'll have stuff like Harpies, which are people that are in Elysium and run the rumor mills.
Yeah.
You'll have the Seneschal, which is basically the guy that tells people what the prince said is happening and goes around and lets people know what the updates are on the city's politics.
Yeah, the right-hand man.
Yeah, you'll have the Sheriff, which is the guy that enforces the law. And what's the one under Sheriff? They're like they're named after torture devices.
Hounds. You got the hounds, which are hounds. The hound dogs. You've got the whips, which are for the Primogen, basically like a
keep the party in line.
Yeah.
As we all learned from the British House of Cards.
Yeah. You've got the Priscus as well, which are the clans, elders, most notable
These are
vampires.
terms that don't show up in vanilla Invictus usually. They're just stuff that's been around for a bit in the different books, and it's encouraged that you piece together your own terms.
Yeah, generally the second edition of Vampire The Requiem didn't go into that much details about the structure of the society. They played more loosey-goosey. There's really scarce reference. So the book things that you already know it from the first edition. In first edition it was pretty much laid out, okay, here are the titles, here's the people, pick and choose however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's generally the most important people in the society. The prince, the seneschal, the herald, the primogen, the priestess, the whip, the harpy, sheriff, and hounds.
Yeah, and there's ones for other clans, but
the covenants.
other covenants, but I don't know them, so I don't care.
Yeah, basically Invictus is kind of like the Camarilla, where it's what most people are going to be playing.
You might have a city where it's like, oh, the Lankia Sanctus here, and everyone has their junk in iron traps or something.
You've got the Archbishop then, or you've got the Cartians running the city, and you've got the Senate, or what have you.
The Order of Dracul's here, and everyone has to submit for getting their fucking limbs put into grinders so they can experiment on them. Whatever the Order of Dracul does.
Yeah. Yeah, again, each covenant has their own power structure and their own tricks and everything.
Yeah. So yeah, that's power structure. In Atlantis 1, the vampires there, it's an Invictus organization, and there's a weird offshoot of the Circle of the Chrome that lives under the city that is its own thing and has its own power structure.
Yep.
But yeah, it's an Invictus city. It has a prince. It allows different vampires to be the senators, and they have what's called a senate, where the prince takes orders and stuff.
Yep.
Other than that, just a fairly normal vampire society city. Vampires in general, though, they have things that make it easier to express that humanity part of the game. Like they have touchstones, which are the one person or thing that's the most important thing to you that ties you back to being alive.
Yep.
They're a thing that if you spend time with it, it makes it easier to, I think, gain humanity or gain willpower.
Willpower.
Well,
Yeah.
Do we want to tell what our touchstones are?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I was going to get into with the touchstone thing. So yeah, you guys tell the people what your characters as vampires' touchstones are.
My touchstone, as I talked about earlier, or that wasn't in this one, that was in the Immortal one. So my character knew a guy that went missing named Sam Jacobs.
Just a nice
Him
guy.
and his daughter were both, they both went to the same church I went to. So when he went missing, I basically started like looking into his daughter, helping her out. When I got turned into a vampire, well, my character's dad died when she was younger, everything like that. So what this other girl is going through really helps tie her back to her humanity, and like helping to take care of her and stuff also helps that out. Her name is Alice Jacobs, and she's 17.
Okay.
Alright, and we're back.
So Kaiser's touchstone is his father. They don't really have a nice relationship or anything like that. It's very, not rivalrous, but they kind of take jabs at each other, and they're very good at keeping each other
On their toes.
and at a level. And yeah, he's his touchstone. He's very out of touch with him as a vampire because he can't really tell his family about any of this. So it just comes off like he's being weird and evasive and only coming around at night and forgetting things.
Well, for Fyodor, I think the touchstone I settled with would be the Grand Mason Lodge, actually, the whole building itself, because you'll be really attached to places as well. So Fyodor will be trying to protect the institution, to keep the building, nice and in pristine condition, and interact with people there. My first draft of the touchstone was actually a bit more accidental, because the touchstone doesn't really have to be people that necessarily had contacts in as a human. It could be like the person you've heard the first, or In my case, I was thinking, okay, how about a honest policeman that was on Fyodor's case when he accidentally murdered someone the first time he was feeding, and then he developed that sort of relationship with him after he got bailed out of the jail, and the Masons cover everything up. So he still will be interacting with him on a regular basis, talking with him, and not necessarily revealing anything about himself, just yeah.
Alright. Alright, what's next?
And what the resources you need, the viewer questions.
Okay, yeah. So some people were asking questions about what you kind of got to prep when you're running Vampire, and the answer is not as much as you'd think. The best thing to have in mind when you're running Vampire is what NPCs exist in the city that the players will bounce off of.
Yeah.
So, like, when you guys are building your characters, you all attach yourselves to an already built NPC I had sketched out, and we're like, that's my sire.
Yeah.
So once you have the sire nailed down and the structure they're a part of, it's pretty easy from there.
Yeah, generally you want to have the vampiric society somewhat sketched out with the players, or after or before if it could be their characters, because the vampiric society can be really important to your characters, all the interactions and the power dynamics. I guess what else you have to keep in mind, like, hey, vampires need to feed on the regular, and that can be a part of the story in itself.
Yeah, that'll attract attention and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, making sure the vampires have access to like areas to feed from, which isn't hard. Most vampires can find those areas fairly easy if they're not cleaned by other ones.
Like, generally how we handle this is the first scene of each chapter or recording. We let the players, do something small, like feeding, for example, which, a good rhythm to get to. You start the game with something, you get the points you need, and
Feeding, interacting with a touchstone, that kind of thing.
Yep.
It's a good way to start off a session.
I guess
Gets everyone into their character's mind.
I guess, generally, if you be planning on running a larger campaign, then you should start getting into the vampire politics, which is all about dividing the land. Like, who owns this part of the city? Who owns that part of the city? who feeds where, and that starts getting important because vampires are territorial, and if you're on someone else's territory, they can really power themselves up based on defending their own turf.
Yeah, vampires fucking hate it. They're pack animals.
Yep.
Not pack animals.
Territorial.
They do. Gangrels fight in packs and stuff.
Well,
They mark their territory and shit.
Yeah, generally every vampire will be leaving sort of marks behind on their feeding grounds, and that's sort of known as the cacophony, which is that sort of subconscious language of the vampires that are, left either in the city or the ways the vampires used to communicate without the mortals knowing, really. Which is also an interesting addition to the second edition. What else? What do we ask you about?
Okay, so yeah, what was the next kind of question we had lined up?
A question about building some combat encounters around this splat.
Building combat encounters is an odd question because that's not something you have to worry about for every RPG or every game.
Yeah.
Like, there's a combat engine and there's a robust power set built around it. Like, there's like, although the vampire powers really do help combat out and stuff, but it's not something you really got to worry that much about.
Generally keep in mind that vampires are a bit more resilient in combat because they're undead, so
they have a lot more defense and much more meat to them.
Yeah.
Like, they only take bashing damage from most things.
And then, you have to go over a couple times of their HP before they start losing anything. They can heal themselves rapidly. Especially when they're fighting immortal, they can just drink from them and heal themselves instantly from that.
Yeah, they can do damage and heal at the same time.
Plus, if they snare out the opponents with their Mark of the Beast, they can depower them and empower themselves.
Vampires also have an innate ability to boost their physical attributes in a fight, so even if they don't have any of the disciplines that lend themselves to that, they have an inborn talent for it.
Yeah.
Against people, vampires are pretty rough.
Yeah. Pretty much like mortals can't really stand up to them.
Yeah, and things like firearms and like clubs and stuff, like things that people will usually have on them or knives, aren't going to do anything.
Yeah, like vampires don't suffer at all from tilts, which is like, oh, my arm broke. Nope, I'm a vampire, I don't care.
Yeah.
That doesn't hamper me at all.
Vampires will get into fights with other vampires if they get into like really intense emotional arguments and stuff, so I don't really write up other NPCs as full character sheets. I just give them dice pools and a general idea of what disciplines they probably have.
Yeah, just like...
It's not important.
Look up at the quick and dirty characters, probably from Chronicles of Darkness, and
something like that.
Pick whatever. Like, that's how we made the first enemy NPC that we're fighting the vampire, so it's good enough.
Yeah.
Just grab some quick stats and use it.
So yeah, let's talk about your characters as vampires. We talked about it in the character piece a bit before, so what are your characters like now that they're vampires? How did they get turned?
My character was on her morning run, which she does every day, so it's pretty easy to jump her at that point. See, my sire has servants.
So who's your sire?
I'm getting there. My sire has servants who are not alive. He makes these weird monsters, these weird zombies, basically.
Eisenman.
My sire's name is escaping me right now, actually.
Dr. Marcellus Sangiovanni.
Marcellus, yes, Dr. Marcellus Sangiovanni. He was brought down into the city because he's a scientist, a medical scientist, and he was brought down to investigate this blood plague that's been going on, because vampires don't get hurt by sicknesses, but if they feed from someone with a sickness, then they can pass it to the next person they feed from, which is super dangerous for a disease like this.
Mm-hmm.
So he was brought down to investigate it, figuring out who has it, how to stop the spread of it, how to tell if someone has it, stuff like that. And he needed an assistant. Like, it was just unbelievable how much work the prince was expecting to do. And my character is a doctor. Not a legal doctor, but she basically taught herself. So yeah, she was going for a run one day, and he got his servants to basically jump her and take her where he is, and he turned her. So that's how she was turned. How she's changed since she's become a vampire. She still is religious, although it's kind of toned down from when she was mortal. And she's kind of more quiet about it because she doesn't actually know how vampires affect this. Like, if she's a vampire, does that mean she's going to hell? Like, does she have a soul anymore? Is my soul gone? How does that work? But she doesn't want to start asking these kinds of questions to other vampires because it might be like rude, basically, and she might come off as stupid.
Well,
she really doesn't like coming off as stupid. So,
well, especially since initially we don't have Lancia and Sanctum, so you don't have the spiritual aspects of the vampires.
exactly. So all I know is that vampires exist, and she's trying to work out how that affects her faith. But then other shit was happening, so we didn't really focus on that.
I guess also your character's a bloodhound.
Pardon?
Your character's a bloodhound?
Yes, my character is very good at sniffing out impurities in blood, basically, which actually is really helpful for the blood plague research that her sire is doing.
Yep.
Powers, she's good at seeing people's secrets, and she actually really likes secrets. She likes learning things about people that don't really want her to know. She's really good at hiding, and yeah, that's basically the only way she's changed. She still is insecure about her intelligence in Vampire, especially because her sire's not very jolly. Like, well, he doesn't say like, "Oh, you did a good job" or anything like that. He's like, "This is what I want you to do," and he has that look on his face, or he thinks that you've done something wrong.
Come here, assistant.
Yeah. He's not a very affectionate person. So that's still part of her character, and the religion is not focused on, but still something she believes in and is trying to work out.
Very good. Kevin.
Alright, so Kaiser, since becoming a vampire, well, he was turned because he was going out looking for a mark, he was a little low on cash, and wound up pickpocketing the wrong person. This person being the prince's second in command, whose name is
Rebecca Smith?
Rebecca Smith.
Yes.
And she was looking to take control of the drug trade in Atlantis 1 and needed someone who had a bit more expertise in that area.
First-hand experience.
First-hand experience, yeah. So yeah, she turned him, and he became a part of the Invictus. As a vampire, he kind of teeters on being a lot more brutal. He has a very short temper compared to when he was a human, and when he loses it, things get a lot more violent. He has more of an inferiority complex than he did before as a vampire, because he's surrounded by all these people who have been around forever, and one thing you shouldn't do around Kaiser is make him feel stupid. So, yeah, he goes through a lot of that, but he's also enjoying himself. Clearly, he's a lot less inhibited than he was before. And yeah, he's really good at breaking into places. Really, he's an expert in occults, a lot of which he learned from his grandmother, and he is an extremely good person to bring along if you need to intimidate someone.
What kind of powers do you have? Because, like, I went over my powers, but I didn't really say if they were, but, like, I have Auspex, which is secrets. I have Obfuscate, which lets me hide.
He was all about defense. He was able to harden himself up. He had, a single point in, yes. He had a single point in Dominate, but never really used it. Except for when he did.
That one time.
Oh.
Because it seemed really unreliable.
Yeah. Dominate. Actually, used it a couple times, but yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Dominate. What else did you do?
Resilience.
Oh, resilience. I forgot that was a power.
Yeah, that's where he kind of was an expert. Is resilience, toughening himself up.
How'd your relationship with your parents change when you were a vampire?
Went way south. He started avoiding them all the time because he had no way of.
Oh yeah, you did kind of cover that previously. Actually, we did talk about that. But...
Yeah, he has no real way of explaining to them what happened. He's just really reclusive, being weird, forgetting about his cat. And like,
and his cat hates him.
No, she doesn't anymore. She loves him. She loves his blood.
Ghoul.
Yes.
Well, yeah, easy way for a cat to make a cat love you, feed it.
And a lot of his time as a vampire is being spent kind of observing things and learning more about vampire. Because he's super young right now as a vampire.
As a vampire and a person.
So he's kind of biding his time to see how much he can learn before he can start making bigger moves. taking it slow because now he has all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's perfect then.
So
Now we're back.
So Fyodor, well, he was embraced because he was getting into politics generally through his Mason connections and all that, being in Atlantis one for a while, and yeah, he was embraced by.
Oh wait, no, sorry.
Yes?
Continue. I thought that he didn't talk about Sai, but he did.
He did.
Forgot.
So yeah, he got embraced by Alexei Romanov, the last heir of the Romanov dynasty, and yeah, now he has large boots to fill, because his sire is a member of a vampiric dynasty, the third section dynasty, that's based on the third section of His Imperial Majesty's own chancellery, which is a secret police from the Imperial Russia. And yeah, what else? Yeah, his sire is the spy master of Atlantis One. He's a maquette.
What are his powers?
So yeah, he's got Auspex and Obfuscate, so it's just like Leo.
Oh yeah, I forgot we had the exact same powers, and we're both Maquette.
Yeah.
Jesus Lord. Oh yeah, we're both Maquette.
Yep.
And Kaiser
Ventru.
is Ventru.
Yeah. So yeah, generally Fyodor focuses on more of the social aspects of things. He quickly established himself some feeding grounds around his Grand Lodge of the Masons. He's into the city saddle, the clan saddles, and yeah, he's the character in the group that can read the cacophony, which is those secret codes of the vampires. Yeah. What else?
You have a cult.
Oh,
that
yeah,
now
cult
knows
is
that
about
you're a
vampires.
vampire. So
Well,
now,
Masquerade violation.
well,
yeah.
clairvoyant mortals. How can you like not have them figure things out?
Yeah, so now the Masons know the vampires exist and all are trying to vie for being embraced. Trying to suck up to him to get eternal life.
Well, that's a good thing to aspire to. And yeah, that's really it.
Alright, well, that I think is the bulk of information about Vampire the Requiem for our game. And after this is the normal sessions. So I think we'll wrap there. I was Devin,
Nicole?
Kevin?
And Peter.
and this is sponsored by Nobody, signing off.